When you get Pyramid Head to stop slaughtering people for a second and tell you to call him, I mean, I don't mean to brag or nothing.
The fire's getting started. The fire's getting started. You got just what you wanted. Be careful what you wish for. You knocking on the wrong door. You want that dark side of me? Say hello to Ivy.
Hello, all you ghost ghouls and goblins. I'm Casey Ivy, and this is Hello Ivy, my YouTube channel where I will talk all things Halloween, horror, and spooky. So today I am here to talk about Paranormal Cirque by Cirque Italia, a traveling paranormal circus that gives you thrills and chills and everything in between. Now let me start by saying that I went into this show completely blind. I didn't know what I was expecting. Like, I've seen a couple of like the pictures and advertisements and knew that it was supposed to be circus and creepy, and that was pretty much it. I didn't know what the acts were gonna be. I didn't know what to expect from this location. Nothing at all. But I was definitely going with a learning experience, so I'm here to tell you about my experience, how it all went, and everything in between. So you've probably seen this show advertised plenty of times on Facebook or Instagram over the past few years. I know I definitely have. And I finally got the opportunity to go see it this past Easter Sunday on April 20th. The thing about the Paranormal Cirque is it doesn't enter New York. It doesn't come to New York at all. So any New Yorkers that's interested, you will have to travel to Jersey. The closest location I was able to find was Elizabeth, New Jersey, which was probably the easiest commute depending on where you're coming from in New York City. I will say, however, I probably should have did a little bit more research on how to commute there because it was a journey for me, and only because Google Maps led me astray. So one thing to keep in mind is if you are going to see this show and it happens to be around the holidays, make sure you check for the holiday schedule. And again, this is only applying if you decide to take public transportation, buses, etc. If you decide to Uber, none of this is really going to matter except for maybe accounting for traffic. But this is all specific to public transportation, okay? So there is a bus that went straight to the Mills at Jersey Gardens. That was the closest one that I could find. There's a bus that goes straight from Grand Central to that mall, but I missed it. And so now I'm panicking, trying to figure out the best way to get to this mall, and I just was about to take an Uber. I was about to settle for it, but it was gonna be $70 to get there, and I wanted to save my money for anything I was gonna do at the event, so it was a no-go for me. I had to find another bus that led into Elizabeth, New Jersey, and still have to take an Uber from that location to get to the actual mall. And in order for me to get to that bus, the people that worked at the station told me 3 different locations to go to inside of the bus station, where I almost missed the second bus that was going to get me to Elizabeth, New Jersey. Luckily, I moved fast, I caught my bus, and I was able to get there on time. Now, I will talk a little bit about the circus acts, but fair warning, I don't know if this is a spoiler alert or not, because each show is supposed to be different every single year. I don't know how much of that is true since this was my first time going, obviously, so just in case it is, spoiler alert is now in play. Now, before I get into the actual show itself, let me talk a little bit about the venue. I've already talked about my journey getting there, so let me talk about the venue and the space. Now, since my performance ended up being near a mall, you have 2 options for the bathroom. Option A is to use the mall to go to the bathroom before you enter and scan your ticket inside, or option B is to use the porta potties that they have available. I personally am not a fan of porta potties. I really hate them, but I didn't know that it was going to be porta potties. I was not looking, I was just kind of rushing in and hoping that I wasn't missing anything by arriving at the time that I did. Mind you, I arrived around 5 o'clock, which is early, but I wanted to get there even earlier just in case there were things that I was missing before the show even happened. Now, if I had known it was porta potties, I definitely would have went inside the mall, but I didn't. I scanned my ticket, I used a porta potty, and then I went inside this lovely tent. Now, the tent itself is really cool. It's blacked out on the inside because all of the inside of the tent is black, and it looks really, really cool with all the red lights that they had going on. And upon entry, I saw face painting. I am a child at heart, and I immediately went for the face paint. Another thing you need to know is the venue is cash only. There is a person that's set up to take money off your card and give you cash in exchange. But I read some reviews that people were getting overcharged on their cards and stuff like that. Even though this was after, I would just say be prepared by bringing some cash, some smaller bills, because certain things are going to cost certain prices. It's easier for you to just have smaller bills to break things down and gives you more options to do things with your money. So inside, as I'm taking my seat, you get to engage with a couple of the actors that they have just walking around the space being, well, creepy. One of the people I had my first interaction with was none other than Freddy Krueger himself. Yes, I literally sit down in my front row seat. I look over to my right, and there is Freddy Krueger staring at me. So fun. But it actually was really fun. He just slowly inched closer, seat by seat, as I'm staring at him being like, dude, what the So he gets closer, and eventually I asked if it was okay to take a picture with him as well. I was able to get 2 pictures, a selfie, and a paid professional photo from the photographers that they had walking around. That's the other thing about this venue. They have plenty of photograph opportunities, which for me was a love-hate relationship. If it was with a character that was walking around the house, it was $5 per picture. But once they had, I'll get back to that a little bit later, but at intermission, they give you a photo opportunity with a couple of characters, and then that was $20 per photo. And I felt like that was a bit of a leap, because you had $5 with characters that are pretty much similar, and then you went to a $20 leap. And I felt like that was pretty intense. But I still did it because I really wanted the picture. So now I'm seated, I have my popcorn, and I'm ready for this circus to begin. I'm taking in the space, I'm looking at other actors that are walking around. There was a Michael Myers that was walking around, and very much unidentified character. It just looked like some kind of regular ghoul or something, I don't know. But they were pretty interesting. Some of them were getting some good scares. One of them had a chainsaw that was revving up every now and again, so he was getting a couple good scares. But for me, I wasn't really scared. I was definitely having a good time though. So at the top of the show, they have a little kid bike out, which of course is always creepy across the board, and he has his head of his mother in his basket, and he proceeds to talk to his mother and also explain to us the rules of the circus. No phones, be engaged, have fun. And since I'm not a rule breaker and was in the front row, I did not get any footage from the actual show, but you can probably Google and YouTube a couple snippets from other shows and kind of piece together a little bit of what I saw. And right now I'm gonna describe some of the acts the best way that I can. So after this little kid bikes away, we get immersed into the story of this circus, basically. And what happens is we have a clown whose name we honestly never catch at all. Or if we did, I don't remember it. But we have this clown, he's coming in, and he is, I'm assuming, some kind of salesman. He has a briefcase and he starts with some bits. Now let me also state that before I describe this bit, this show is really not meant for kids, and they advertise that. They say that it's meant for people that are 18 and older, and they stand by that. They do give the asterisk kind of thing where they allow kids 13 to 17 with an adult, with a supervised adult. But depending on your kid, you're gonna know your kid better than others. You have a couple parents that will, have their kids watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre at 14, and others that are like, Texas Chainsaw is too much. It depends on you, but I personally would not suggest it for anybody that's under 18, because a lot of the jokes and gags are very much sexual in nature. So unless you've had that talk with your kid that is between those ages, more so between 13 and I want to say 15 or 16, I would not suggest bringing them to a Paranormal Cirque show. So actually I need to backtrack a little bit, because the first act that we got to see were these demon clown people doing a whip show, that they're using whips to hit targets and stuff like that. And that was pretty cool. There was one really long one that I swore up and down was probably going to hit an audience member, especially me being in the front row. But obviously they know what they're doing. Nobody got hit and all the targets were A1. They did a great job. It was pretty much entertaining. And then we moved on to this next bit. So the clown, I assume, is a salesman. He has a briefcase, and they do also preface on the website that you might be selected for acts that may or may not be offensive. So you also need to be prepared for that as well. However, I do think the clown did a very great job of engaging and disengaging if he felt like someone was not interested in the bit or would be extremely uncomfortable with something that he was doing. So great job on the clown that was there, whatever his name is. He was entertaining all the way through, and I think he did a very great job with consent is key, especially as a performer. So onto this bit. So this clown is opening his briefcase and he's going through things and he's pulling out like underwear and all this other stuff, and eventually he pulls out a dildo. And he's like, oh, this isn't mine. This belongs to Alex. And Alex was the chosen member that was there for a good amount of the bits. So for those of you who don't know, there's going to be a couple things I discuss where it's the comedy of threes, and comedy of threes is key. It's a big thing throughout the comedy world and improv. So I'm going to state that off the bat so you understand exactly what I'm talking about. There is a lot of comedy in threes throughout the show, specifically with the clown, and they pay off every single time. So he takes this dildo out and he is waving it in Alex's face. He also at this point has already licked Alex's full head. But when Alex shakes his head to not put the dildo on his head, the clown just, he brushes it off, still very much in character, and he goes, okay, whatever, because he's speaking English and Italian as he's doing his bits, and he just puts it back in the briefcase, closes it, and he keeps pushing with the show. Like I said, consent is key. He does a great job every single time. So he proceeds to walk onto the stage and he's approaching what is the set. And the set is this really big castle. And when he knocks on the door, doop, 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 doop. And then of course, the third knock is when everything unravels. You have the doors fly open and these demonesses, vampires walk out and they start doing some choreography. They look cool, they look bomb, and there is a demon lord that comes out and he basically says, you've disrupted my ritual. I now need you to sacrifice 3 souls. If you do not, I will take yours. And that is pretty much it. They do their little dances and then they go away. So now the clown is looking for 3 sacrifices. Now at this point, I'm pretty set on this clown either getting his 3 sacrifices and it being like a really cool ritual at the end of the show, or him completely failing and him being sacrificed. But I was kind of clinging to this storyline throughout. And I will say my big con about that is we barely come back to it. Like we get 1 sacrifice technically, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but then we never get back to it. Like there's no other attempts for him to sacrifice anybody. And then we just have more circus acts, which is like obviously part of the point, but when we had such a very interesting story and you already have like 2 people he's already messed with in the audience, well, 1 at that point, you have 1 person he already messed with in the audience, you're looking for those other bits. We're told that we're going to be able to participate in some kind of aspect. So I was really looking forward to it, and then it rarely happened. So I was a little disappointed with that. Now moving on, after we've had this premise set up for us, the clown is now off to find his sacrifices, and in between we are getting these demon performances and everything from all these characters that are, I guess, built up in this world. One of the first acts that we see after the clown, which was actually one of my favorites throughout the entire circus, was a woman being hung by her hair and she's spinning and she's doing all these acrobatic tricks. But it was the way that they set up this little story inside of her act that I just absolutely adored. We are basically now immersed in the world of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You have a guy who is dressed up as Leatherface and he comes out carrying his chainsaw and a body covered in a bloody tarp over his shoulder, and he comes out, he's taking control of the stage as we have this rope being lowered down, or cord, I'm not sure the technical term, but it is being lowered down with the hook to attach to something. What? We don't know yet. We just know that this person is going to be doing something from the ceiling. And as he places the body down, he does the attachment to her hair. And then she slowly gets lifted into the air. The tarp unfurls and she is bloodied. She has a very stereotypical, Texas Chainsaw Massacre character with like a plaid shirt, tank top, and then some shorts, barefoot, but she's bloodied and beaten up and she's just hanging from her hair, unconscious basically. And Leatherface leaves her there and now she's awake and she's trying to escape the best way that she can. And she starts out with running towards the audience to be set off into the air, and she screams and she does all these cool acrobatic tricks. It was so dope to watch it, and especially with the premise that was already set up, I was invested. So all the cool swirling and everything happens. It was really, really cool. Leatherface now comes back out. She's still hanging in the air from her hair, and Leatherface revs up and starts cutting into her body, and they had the blood spurt out from the chainsaw, and then the lights go out, and that was the end of her act. But it was so cool, and I was definitely immersed. I will say this is probably a show you should probably go see at night, so that way the light changes have a bit more of an effect. I went during the daytime because I did not want to deal with an extremely late night commute, and when the lights went out, it wasn't pitch black darkness, so you see them fully transitioning and breaking out of things, which isn't a make or break for the show. I do think it would help with the immersion of it, where you can actually get a blackout and then maybe a blue out to transition and stuff like that. And for those who might not know the difference between a blackout and a blue out, because these are definitely theater terms that I'm using, blackout is exactly what it sounds like. It is completely pitch black on stage and no one can see anything. But a blue out is where you use just a little bit of lighting, normally blue lights, to provide just enough light for actors and people to see on stage so they can do their active movements and everything. You might see them more in like Broadway shows every now and again, where you see just that very light hint of blue on people. It's just to provide them a little bit of light so they can see and move carefully on stage. But when it's completely pitch black, normally no one can see anything, and having those small transitions can help with the immersion. So by seeing it at nighttime, you don't have the bleed in from the sunlight through like the little pole holes for the tent to stand, and it might help with the experience. Then next we get a motorcycle act, where it's a motorcycle on a wire and a trapeze, I guess. It's not a swinging one, it's a metal one, and a girl is like swinging and spinning on that, doing poses, and the guy is on top of the motorcycle also doing poses, and it was cool or whatever. They were just dressed as vampires with like blood on them, and then eventually they did a spin where like the bike and the trapeze part just like fully spun. That part was cool, but for the rest of it I was just like, okay, where's my paranormal with this cirque? I was just kind of missing a lot of the paranormal aspect aside from, well, the costumes and this premise that was set up at the beginning, which was really my big thing of bringing it back to that story, because we had this whole premise set up of how the souls were supposed to be sacrificed and this whole paranormal thing. So I really wanted more paranormal with my cirque. Another issue that I had with Paranormal Cirque was there wasn't enough diversity in the acts for me. A lot of the acts were aerial acts, and that's not to say the acts themselves were bad, it's just that so many of them were dealing with aerial silks or spinning from hair, spinning from rope. It got to a point where I think the second half was about 3 aerial acts back to back. If you have a lot of aerial acts, that's okay, but then you have to find a way to split it up to where it's not just aerial, maybe something with jump ropes, aerial. It got to a point where I just was waiting for the rope to come down because there were so many aerial acts. Now, eventually they did have a jump rope act, which was pretty cool, and also what is called a space wheel or wheel of death. And a lot of you have seen it and know what I'm talking about. It's this big circle that normally has a cone attached, and the person is on the inside or the outside where it spins and they're keeping track, that kind of thing. And that was an also interesting act in itself, but then I was still waiting to come back to that storyline of the sacrifices. I also have to applaud the entire crew and cast of this show, because a lot of them were pulling double duty. The person that was the gravedigger that I took pictures with at the top of the show ended up being the juggler during the show. He also did a really great job, and he was also part of the jump rope act that happened later in the show. One of the dancers I recognized off the bat because of her haircut and colored contacts was serving us popcorn and soda before the show even started to then dance throughout the rest of that entire show. So they were definitely putting their work in on this show. So hats off to all of them for doing that, because if it was me, you cannot have me serving popcorn and then dancing my butt off for the next hour and a half, 2 hours. So then back to the actual content of the show. Like I said, you have a whole bunch of aerial acts, you have the Wheel of Death, and then we get back to the storyline of the clown being sacrificed, that whole thing. So he fails to get his sacrifices throughout the show and ends up being sacrificed to this demon lord, where he eventually becomes the new demon lord himself. And this is where another problem comes in for me. So whether it is a sound thing, a lighting thing, a character thing, actor thing, I don't know what needs to change, but that transition was very, very, very weird. So all the demons come back out, and there's these zombie characters that were prefaced as they were helping with the Wheel of Death transition. They all come out and they are surrounding the clown in a circle with the demon lord, basically telling him how he's about to be sacrificed. So with this beat line. They're getting closer and closer and closer till eventually you can no longer see the clown, and they all have their hands up and are basically doing jazz hands, like high up in the air. Let me do this, right? So they're basically like this as this transition happens, and at one point the music just cuts out and they're in blue light, but the hands are still going, and it just looked weird. I felt like, you know how when you see your little cousin or niece or nephew perform at a performance and they have to do the little ballerina hands as they spin around? I felt like that was happening on stage right in front of me. And this is supposed to be a circus. So my experience seeing Paranormal Cirque was interesting. Aside from the show itself, they had plenty of photo opportunities, as I mentioned before. I was able to get a picture with Freddy. I was able to get a picture with Chucky as they were marching around with the doll, so you can get a picture with Chucky the doll. And at intermission, they give you the opportunity to take a picture with Pyramid Head and a nurse from Silent Hill, as well as one of the demoness that they had throughout the show. Now, like I said, the intermission one, they had you pay $20 for, which I felt like was such a big jump from the $5 to the $20 that they had, but I still opted for the opportunity because it's freaking Pyramid Head. Even though he wasn't tall, he was still pretty built and he had the physique of Pyramid Head, and it was still cool to have that experience. But at this point, I also have another qualm because character work is very important to me. As an artist, as a performer, and as a theater goer, and a person who has worked in haunted houses, it is very important for me to see people stay in character. When you are in front of people that paid to see you in whatever aspect they pay to see you, they are a paying person that are expecting a character. So when I see Michael Myers, who's supposed to be this hulking, intimidating personality, start joking around with people, it kind of breaks the immersion. And I understand that as a performer and as a person who gets into costume a lot, there are certain aspects of the costume that can be uncomfortable and very unbearable at times. But those are perfect opportunities to just excuse yourself, deal with whatever discomfort, and come back full force. You are getting paid to do a job the same way I paid to attend to see you do said job. Give me character and commit to the bit. So as flattered as I was that Pyramid Head was interested in calling me after the show, dude, you're supposed to want to chop my head off. And quite frankly, I hope they're being paid at a moderate wage because the emphasis on tips throughout the show was kind of scary. Like pretty much every photographer, every person selling merchandise was really emphatic on getting a tip outside of what we already paid for whatever merchandise we were already receiving. Like the biggest example is when I went to go take a picture with Pyramid Head, I was about the third person in line to take a picture, and the nurse was shoving the tip bucket in people's face. Like, I understand it's hard out here in these streets, trust me, I know, but shoving a tip bucket in somebody's face, including an older woman that you still helped off of the stage, is a bit aggressive. Now, luckily, she did not shove this tip bucket in my face as I was already prepared to tip, but that calmed down. And when I say commit to the bit, be like that one person who scared me in the haunted house who literally laughed at me in character. I said to her point blank, I said, "Oh, you got me." And as opposed to just regularly laughing, she was this creepy prisoner type character, but her voice was distorted the entire time that she was speaking to me, and even when she laughed. That's how you commit. And I can't even be mad being laughed at because she did it in character. Like, girl, laugh at me again. I could take it. That was hilarious. Now, I know I've had a lot of complaints about my experience going to see Paranormal Cirque, but at the end of the day, I still had a great time. I got to get pictures with Freddy Krueger, I had some really cool experiences, and the show itself isn't too bad. The clown is hilarious, the juggler was really cool, the girl that was hanging by her hair, chef's kiss. But there are some things that you should be aware of if you decide to go see Paranormal Cirque. Like I said, they only have porta potties, so if you are really adverse to porta potties, make sure you go to a performance that's by a mall. I'm sure all of them are probably close to a mall, but mine was literally a skip over a hill to get into that mall. So as long as the mall is convenient, go to the bathroom before the show and after the show. Intermission might be a bit too short, so maybe don't drink too much soda in between. 2. Research your commute. Make sure that you are abiding by any holiday schedules, any weekend schedules, so that way you don't have to go through the ring around that I did. If you prefer to indulge in alcohol or any activities under the like, do it before the show. They do not serve alcohol at this place whatsoever, so you would have to do it before you enter the venue. This is only if you partake, so for the 21 and plus crowd, that is your warning. It is cash only. It is emphasized on your ticket, it is emphasized on the website, and when you get your email confirmation, it's in there too. This space is cash only. So to avoid any issues, any problems, get your cash before you arrive to that tent. There is a booth so you can purchase tickets on site, but I purchased my tickets in advance. I just wanted to avoid any issues. And whether or not the booth takes cash or card in order to purchase tickets, I don't know, as I did not approach it, but I would just go by the cash only rule and bring cash in itself. There are no costumes allowed in the space either. This is something that is also emphasized on your ticket, so no costumes, nothing too crazy. If you want to dress up a little bit and look a little creepy, they will absolutely accept that, but I was even scared to just wear my colored contacts. A lot of their staff will have blood on their face and colored contacts, so you just being in all black and doing something similar to, well, what I do now, they might mistake you as staff and they just want to avoid that. So try to keep it as simple as possible. Your creepy t-shirts, your themed t-shirts, your t-shirts just like this one are going to be totally fine if you want to dress it up a little bit, but I would lean on the more casual versus the more creepy side of your outfits just to not get mistaken with the staff. Now, if you're looking for something scary, this is not going to be your go-to. The show is not scary at all, but it is creepy and it is entertaining. Like I said, aside from all of my qualms, I still had a great time. Whether I would go again, being a solo trip by myself, I felt like it could have been enhanced a little bit better, probably with really great company. So on the Ivy scale, I'm gonna give this 2 out of 5 Ivies. I expected more paranormal, I expected more Cirque, but I still had a great time nonetheless. So that just about wraps it up on my review of Paranormal Cirque. Let me know if you decide to go see the show. Maybe you'll have a different experience than I did. Like I said, I still had a great time. I just have my personal qualms with it. You can feel free to check them out over the next few months while they're in Jersey. I believe they have about 3 or 4 more different locations before they wrap it up for the season, but they are a year-round show traveling throughout Canada and the United States. Until then, give a like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Follow me at Hello Ivy, that's H3LLO_IVY. And that's about it. Until next time, stay alive. Say bye to Ivy.
The fire's getting started.
The fire's getting started.
You got just what you wanted. Be careful what you wish for. You knocking on the wrong door. You want that dark side of me? Say hello to Ivy.
Who's next?